Don't do this, Nora. You still have time to choose a future that doesn't need ramps.
Walk away now, and the deed to your studio is yours. No debt, no conditions.
Her hand trembled once, then stilled.
Look at him. Grant can give you everything. Everything except respect.
Grant placed the deed on the altar. $2 million, one signature. Phones rose among the guests. I kept my hands on the wheels. Let her choose. Nora tore the deed in half, walked past Grant, and placed her hand on my shoulder. I already did. Vanessa believed the rich man had lost a foolish woman to a ruined one. She didn't know I controlled the billion-dollar company that owned this hotel, Grant's largest debt, and the building beneath her heels. Then she dropped a sealed petition beside our marriage license. "Tomorrow at noon," she said, "your board votes to remove you." The wedding official looked at the envelope, then at me, and his hands stopped moving over the license. "Keep going," I said quietly. He didn't. So I picked up the petition myself and broke the seal while 60 guests held their breath and their phones. I recognized the language on the first page before I finished the second sentence. A continuity clause. My own words, drafted 5 years ago from a hospital bed, allowing temporary executive control of my company to transfer if a board majority ever believed I could no longer perform my duties. I had written it as protection. Vanessa was holding it like a knife. "Noon tomorrow," she repeated, loud enough for the recording phones. "The board votes on whether Marcus Reed is still capable of running anything at all." Grant buttoned his jacket, calm as a man reading a menu. "And immediately after the vote, I'll be presenting an offer to purchase the Adaptive Transportation Division. Someone has to protect those jobs." Nora turned to the official. "Finish the registration, now, please." He signed, she signed, I signed, and before the ink was dry, her phone rang. I watched her face change as she listened. She lowered the phone and looked at Grant, not at me. "My building manager," she said. "The electronic locks on my studio were shut off 20 minutes ago. He says the creditor filed for repossession this morning." Grant didn't deny it. He smiled the way men smile when they've already counted their money. "I bought that debt 8 months ago, Nora. You should read what you sign more carefully. All of you should." So there it was. She had chosen me at the altar, and inside of 5 minutes that choice had a price tag. Her studio, her staff, 10 years of her work locked behind doors Grant controlled. I leaned toward her. "You can still walk away from this license. You'd owe me nothing." Nora looked down at me, and something in her jaw set hard. "I don't sign things twice," she said. Vanessa gathered her clutch, satisfied, and told the room she'd see us at noon. The guests didn't know whether to applaud a wedding or witness a funeral. Honestly, neither did I. Evelyn Shaw found us before the last guests cleared the hall. My chief operating officer, still in the pale gray dress she'd worn as a wedding guest, already had her tablet out. She steered us into the preparation room behind the ceremony hall, locked the door, and pulled up the Vantage Arc governance system on the wall screen. "Marcus, before you see it somewhere else, you need to see it from me." She opened a press statement, released 40 minutes earlier under her own signature, describing me as the founder and strategic advisor of Vantage Arc Holdings, while day-to-day operations continued under the executive team. I put it out the second Vanessa's people started calling investors, she said. I wanted to project stability. You wanted to calm the market, I said, reading it twice. Instead, you just told the world I'm already gone. Strategic advisor. That's the phrase they carve on a founder's headstone, Evelyn. She flinched because she knew I was right. Vanessa's petition claimed I was no longer in active control. My own company had just published a statement agreeing with her. I set that aside because anger wasn't going to unsign it. I spread the petition on the table and took it apart the way I take apart any deal. Find the load-bearing pieces. There were 4. An old medical assessment from my rehabilitation, 5 years stale. The continuity clause itself. A block of proxy votes from minority shareholders. And a video file. Referenced but not attached, described as documentation of my current condition. She needs 60%, I said. She has maybe 52 on paper, and half of those proxies are nervous money, not loyal money. Nervous money can be turned. And the timing is wrong for Grant. If the vote slips even a week, his purchase offer starts to rot. Someone built this to move fast, which means it breaks if we slow it down. Evelyn keyed in her authorization, and I keyed in mine, and we opened something almost no one at Vantage Arc knew existed. The Founder Continuity Archive. Every emergency governance request, every access attempt, every voice instruction connected to that clause, recorded and sealed since the week of my injury. The access log loaded. 3 entries in the past month. All 3 used credentials originally issued to Vanessa Cole. Those were deactivated, Evelyn said. Ordinary access was deactivated, I said. The continuity file was separate. I never touched it. I didn't explain why. Not yet. The log proved her old authorization had been used. It didn't prove whose hands were on the keyboard, and it didn't show what had been copied out. That was the thread I needed to pull. Across the room, Nora ended another call. My staff can't get in. Payroll files, client drawings, everything's behind those locks. I can make 1 call, I said, and those doors open in an hour. She studied me for a long moment. 1 call to who, Marcus? Because 2 hours ago, I thought I married a consultant with a decent suit. Now there's a governance system on the wall, and people are talking about proxy votes. I'm not taking a rescue I don't understand. Fair. Painfully fair. Then here's the plan I can say out loud, I told them both. There's an investor preview in this hotel tonight. Grant arranged it to sell himself as the safe pair of hands. Before 9 o'clock tonight, I break his support. Before noon tomorrow, I kill the petition. In that order. Nora didn't agree. But she didn't leave either. The public lobby was already thick with reporters. Someone's wedding video had found the internet, so I took Nora out through the service corridor instead. At the freight elevator, I entered a 12-digit code, and instead of rising toward the ballroom, we went down. The doors opened onto a floor that doesn't exist in the hotel directory. Security stations, property maps covering an entire wall. Live feeds from 4 buildings in 3 states. Systems marked with a logo Nora had never seen up close. Vantage Arc Holdings. And a dozen employees who straightened when the elevator opened and said, almost in unison, Mr. Reed. Nora walked the length of the wall slowly, reading the division names. Adaptive Transportation. Commercial Properties. Logistics. medical mobility technology. The hotel, she said. The one I just got married in. Vantage Arc owns it, I said. Has for 6 years. And Vantage Arc is mine. She stood with her back to me for a moment, her white dress bright against all those dark screens. How much of your life have I never seen, Marcus? Afternoon tomorrow, I said. I'll answer every question you have, all of them. I promise you that. After, she repeated softly. It wasn't agreement. It was a crack, thin as a hairline in glass, and I heard it and chose to keep moving anyway. That choice would cost me more than Vanessa ever could. I just didn't know it yet. I traded my wedding coat for a navy structured jacket from the office closet. Nora unpinned her veil, folded it once, and knotted the train of her dress up off the floor so she could walk fast. Her hair stayed loose. She looked like a bride who had wandered into a war and decided to stay. Evelyn came down with Grant's offer sheet. He's bidding well under the division's value, but he's wrapped it in a jobs guarantee. Publicly, he looks like a rescuer. I read the financing terms twice, and there it was. He's not buying this with his own money. It's a bridge loan, short fuse. If the acquisition doesn't close fast, his financing collapses. That's why Vanessa scheduled the vote for tomorrow. He can't afford patience. I tapped the page. Tonight, in front of his investors, I'm going to ask him where the money comes from, and I'm going to make sure everyone in that room hears the answer. While Evelyn built the presentation, Nora asked the question I'd been dreading since the archive log loaded. Why does your ex-wife still have access to anything of yours? I could have deflected. Instead, I gave her the part of the truth that mattered to the next 12 hours. 5 years ago, a loading dock accident put a titanium rod in my spine and me in this chair. For the first weeks, I couldn't reliably speak. I built a continuity mechanism so 2 people I trusted could act for the company if I couldn't communicate. Evelyn was one. Vanessa was the other. She was my wife. It made sense at the time. And then? And then, somewhere between my 2nd surgery and my 4th month of rehab, she started seeing someone else. She left when a doctor told her I might never run the company at full capacity again. She bet against me and walked. I kept my voice level, the way I'd practiced for 5 years. I cut her out of the accounts, the systems, everything, except the continuity file. Why not that? Because that file holds my medical reports, recordings of me at my worst. To amend it, I'd have had to open it, read it, watch it. I looked at my hands on the wheels. I built a billion-dollar company in the years after she left, Nora, and I could not make myself open one folder. So I didn't. And that's the door she's walking through right now. Nora was quiet a moment. Then, gently, and it cut deeper because it was gentle. You could restructure an empire, but you couldn't remove the woman who betrayed you from one document? I didn't have an honest answer that didn't admit how much power Vanessa's leaving still held over me. So I gave her no answer at all, and she noticed that too. Evelyn's tablet chimed. It's out. The video. It's going to the shareholders right now. She turned the screen. Grainy footage from a rehabilitation conference room, 5 years old. Me, mid-meeting, when a muscle spasm seized my back and my arm swept a water glass off the table, my face contorting, my voice breaking on a half-finished word. Then the clip ended. "That meeting ran another 40 minutes, I said quietly. The spasm passed in 90 seconds. I chaired the rest of it. I approved the transit contract that built half of what's on that wall. Where's the rest of the footage?" "Cut," Evelyn said. "The version circulating ends exactly where you look weakest." "The original is in the archive, the full session." "Which we can't release in pieces, Marcus. You wrote the rules yourself. The archive publishes complete sessions or nothing. No selective editing by design." "If you want the board to see you recover, they also see the spasm, the medical reports, and—" She hesitated. "Everything else in that session." Everything else. The part where I begged. I knew exactly what was in that folder, which is exactly why it had stayed shut for 5 years. "Not yet," I said. "Tonight we beat Grant with arithmetic, not autopsy. The archive stays sealed." Nora watched me say it, and I saw her file it away. Her husband hides weakness the same way he hides money, completely and at any cost. They caught us in the glass corridor outside the ballroom an hour before the preview. Grant in a midnight tuxedo, Vanessa beside him in a pastel pink formal blazer, that bun still flawless, as if the day had not touched her at all. Grant held out a leather folder to Nora, not to me, to her. "1 page," he said. "A statement that Marcus concealed material financial information from you before your marriage. Sign it, and by morning your studio is open, your debt is canceled, the equipment is yours outright, and your name never appears anywhere near tomorrow's board dispute. You go back to your life, clean." "It's protection, Nora," Vanessa said, and her voice went soft, almost sisterly. "I was married to him. I know how this works. Marcus doesn't ask people if they're loyal. He arranges little situations and watches how you perform. He's been testing you since the day you met. You just haven't found the mirror yet." The accusation landed in my chest like a fist, because it wasn't entirely a lie, and Vanessa knew it. That was always her gift. She never swung with pure fiction. She swung with the 10% of truth that makes the rest stick. Nora read the page, all of it. Then she closed the folder and handed it back. "No. 2 years of your work is sitting behind my locks," Grant said. "Then it sits," Nora said. "Whatever questions I have about my husband, I'll ask my husband, not sign them over to you at a discount." They left. Vanessa glanced back once at me, and there was something in her expression I couldn't name yet. Not anger, anticipation. In the quiet after, Nora didn't celebrate her own loyalty. She turned to me with the folder's poison still in the air. "Marcus, have you ever used your companies to influence my studio, my work, my life?" "I have never demanded anything from you," I said. "Not once." She looked at me for a long, level moment. "That's an answer," she said. "It's just not an answer to my question." And she walked ahead of me into the ballroom, white dress and loose black hair, leaving me alone with the exact size of what I was still hiding. The investor preview filled the ballroom by 8, 200 chairs, shareholders, analysts, and press along the back wall. Vanessa took a seat in the 3rd row, pastel pink among the dark suits, composed as a portrait. Nora sat near the side, apart from everyone. Grant took the stage first, and I'll give him this. He was good. He called me a visionary founder. He talked about my sacrifice, my courage, my legacy. Every word a flower laid on a grave he was digging in real time. Then he pivoted to the future, to stability, to his offer for the Adaptive Transportation Division and his ironclad promise to protect its 4,000 jobs. When he finished, I rolled up the ramp onto the stage. No notes, just a remote in my hand. "Grant, 3 questions," I said. "First, what capital funds your acquisition?" "A syndicated facility," he said smoothly. "Fully committed." "A bridge loan," I said. 90-day fuse." "Second question, which assets secure it?" He hesitated a half-second too long. "Your commercial portfolio. All of it. You've pledged everything you own to buy this division fast, because if it isn't fast, your financing dies. That's not a rescue, Grant. That's a fire sale you're trying to light yourself." Murmurs now. I clicked the remote. "Third question. Who controls your largest outstanding debt?" The screen behind me filled with the consolidated ownership map of Vantage Arc Holdings, unredacted, the version only 4 people on Earth had ever seen. The room went silent as they read it. This hotel, 14 commercial properties, logistics networks in 9 states, the adaptive transportation infrastructure moving 80,000 disabled passengers a day. Combined enterprise value, north of $1 billion. And there, on the left branch of the map, in plain black text, Mercer Development Group, senior secured obligation, held by a Vantage Arc subsidiary. "The rich man offering to rescue my company," I said, "owes his largest loan to my company. He has been standing on my floor in my hotel all evening. His offer is not independent. It cannot close without financing that runs through the organization he's trying to buy. I'm not calling his loan tonight. I don't need to. I only need you to know it exists before you hand him your proxies." I watched Vanessa in the 3rd row, and for the first time in 5 years, I saw her expression break. Not crumble, break like ice under weight. She had left believing my company was a struggling operation limping along behind private ownership. She was learning the truth in real time, in a room she could not control with cameras running. She had bet against me and lost by $1 billion, and everyone was watching her find out. 3 shareholders stood before I left the stage. By 9:15, Evelyn confirmed it. Enough proxies had been withdrawn that the continuity clause could not auto-activate. The board would delay everything until a formal hearing the next morning. A reporter reached Nora near the doors. "Mrs. Reed, knowing what he's worth now, any regrets about turning down Grant Mercer?" Nora didn't even slow down. "I made my choice before I saw a single balance sheet." The numbers came after the man. For about 4 minutes, I let myself believe I had won. Then Vanessa stood up, walked to the technician's table, and said pleasantly, "Leave the ownership map on screen, would you? Mr. Reed shared it with all of us. I'd like to appreciate the details." She took the stage I had just left. She didn't raise her voice. She raised a laser pointer. "This subsidiary," she said, circling a small box in the lower corner, "Meridian Corner Properties, acquired 6 months ago, 1 asset." She let the pause breathe. "The building at 14 Ashworth Lane. Would anyone like to guess Whose design studio occupies the second floor of 14 Ashworth Lane? Every head in that ballroom turned toward the woman in the white wedding dress. Nora looked at the screen, then at me, and I watched her do the math that I had prayed she would never have to do in public. "Marcus," she said, "just my name, a question with one word in it." I could not deny it, so I didn't. "6 months ago," I said, to her, though 200 people were listening, "I learned Grant was buying up the debt on your studio. I knew what he wanted it for. So I bought the building through a subsidiary to protect you. I planned to give you a secured long-term lease after the wedding. You would never have been at his mercy again." "And you never told me." "No." "Why not?" And there, under the lights, with Vanessa holding the microphone like a scalpel, I told the truth, because the lie had just died on screen. Because if you knew I owned the ground under your feet, if you knew what I was worth, I would never know whether you chose me or the life attached to me. Vanessa knew my worth once. It didn't keep her in the room. So I let you believe Grant was the richer man. I wanted to see what you'd choose when choosing me cost you something. The ballroom made a sound I will hear for the rest of my life. That low collective intake of breath when a crowd realizes the villain of the evening may have been miscast. Vanessa didn't even need to twist it. She just laid it out, clean and true. He controlled her workplace. He knew she was being pressured because he was holding the other end of the rope. He let her stand at that altar and tear up $2 million, believing she was sacrificing everything, when he had already decided the outcome of every door she could walk through. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how Marcus Reed loves people. And you're about to let him keep running a company. Nora stood very still. She did not cry. That would have been easier. "I chose a husband this morning," she said quietly, "not an audition." She did not take off her ring. She took her hand off the back of my chair, the same hand, the same shoulder from the altar, and she walked out of the ballroom alone, her white train gathered over one arm. I did not order anyone to stop her. It was the only decent decision I'd made all day. The rest came down like weather. The board's ethics committee convened by conference call within the hour, an undisclosed related party property transaction involving the CEO's spouse. My voting rights were suspended pending the hearing. Procedural control of the meeting passed temporarily to the petitioner of record, to Vanessa. And Grant's acquisition offer, which I had gutted an hour earlier, was quietly restored to the morning's agenda. I had walked into that ballroom with $1 billion of leverage. I rolled out of it with none of it usable, because now any move I made with hidden ownership, called loans or quiet pressure, would prove her case for her. My entire method, the machinery of secret protection I had spent 5 years perfecting, had just been converted into evidence against me. Vanessa passed me at the doors on her way out. She leaned down, close, and said the only sentence she'd said all day that wasn't for an audience. "Now you know how it feels to lose everything in one evening. Sleep well, Marcus. Noon comes early." The staff cleared the ballroom around me, and I didn't move. Near the altar, someone had swept the flowers, but missed the 2 halves of Grant's torn deed, lying where Nora had dropped them 14 hours and 1 lifetime ago. $2 million, ripped down the middle by a woman who thought she was choosing love over money, while I sat there knowing I had rigged the scale. I picked up the pieces and held them, and the memory I'd locked in that archive came anyway, no password required. Vanessa in the doorway of my hospital room, coat already on. Me, unable to make my legs obey, grabbing her sleeve with the one arm that worked, saying, "Please." Her answer delivered without cruelty, which somehow made it worse. "I can't spend my life waiting for the man you used to be." And sitting there in the empty ballroom, I finally understood what I'd done. I hadn't been testing Nora. I'd been relitigating Vanessa. Every hidden asset, every managed situation, every loyalty scale I'd built around a woman who loved me, all of it was me, still arguing with a closed door from 5 years ago. Nora had walked into an argument that started before she ever met me, and I'd let her pay its bill. Evelyn found me around midnight. Say the word and I call Grant's loan at 9 a.m. His financing implodes, his offer dies before the hearing starts. And his 400 employees, the contractors on his half-built projects, the subs waiting on payment? Collateral, she admitted. No, that's her playbook. Win the day, bill the innocent. I handed her the torn deed halves. I don't know why. Maybe I needed my hands empty. 3 instructions instead. First, transfer 14 Ashworth Lane out of the subsidiary and into an independent community property trust. Independent trustees. Neither Nora nor I holds unilateral control. I want it built so that I couldn't pull that string again even if I wanted to. Second, give Nora's studio a protected lease under the trust. Market rate, no strings. Third, I made myself say it, prepare the complete Founder Continuity Archive for release. The full sessions, no edits, no redactions, nothing cut to protect my image. Everything. Evelyn went pale. Marcus, the archive doesn't just convict Vanessa. It shows the board every medical report, every bad hour. It shows you. She stopped. Begging, I said. It shows me begging. I know what's in it, Evelyn. I've spent 5 years knowing. It could cost you the company even if it beats her. Then I'll lose it as the man I actually am, I said, instead of keeping it as the man I pretend to be. Prepare the file. I found Nora at 2 a.m. at the studio because I knew she'd be there, and because the front locks were still dead, I found her the way her staff had. Through the side entrance, carrying drawings out to her car in the dark, still in her wedding dress. The veil was gone. The train was gathered and knotted over her arm. Her hair was loose. She had been my wife for 1 day, and she was spending its last hours evacuating her life's work through a service door because of men who claimed to love her. I set a folder on her drafting table. She didn't touch it. The building, I said. As of this morning, it goes into an independent community trust. Independent trustees. I can't touch it. You can't owe me for it. Your lease is protected whether you ever speak to me again or not. That part isn't a negotiation, and it isn't an apology. It's just fixed. She kept packing for a moment. Then she stopped and asked the question, the real one. The one every other conversation today had been circling. Did you buy this place to protect me, Marcus, or to test me? There was a version of the answer that would have been kind. I gave her the true one instead. Both. Her hands went still on the drawing tube. I was afraid, I said, that the moment you knew what I was worth, I'd lose the ability to know why you stayed. Vanessa stayed for the worth and left with it. So I built a world where you couldn't possibly be staying for the money, because I hid the money. I told myself it was protection. It was fear wearing protection's coat. And fear doesn't get to decide which facts my wife is allowed to use when she chooses her own life. You were right at the preview. You chose a husband. I gave you an audition. That's the ugliest version of it, and it's the accurate one. Nora breathed out slowly. She didn't forgive me. She did something harder. She kept talking to me. What's in the folder? Trust documents and full access credentials to the Founder Continuity Archive. Everything Vanessa is using, everything she stole from, everything I've hidden, from the board, from you, from myself. No conditions. Read whatever you want. She opened the archive on my tablet right there among the packed boxes, and together we pulled one access record. The old credentials used 3 times in the past month, from a device whose registration traced to hardware Vanessa had been issued during my rehabilitation and never returned. Deliberate access, time-stamped, authenticated. What we still couldn't see was what she had exported, and the system's own rules meant proving it publicly would mean opening everything. Nora closed the tablet. I'll review the rest alone, she said. The hearing's at noon. I know when the hearing is, Marcus. She lifted the last tube of drawings. I'm not promising you I'll be there. I'm done making promises before I have all the facts. You, of all people, should respect that. I did. It cost me the whole drive back to say nothing, but I did. By 8 the next morning, the story had a shape, and it wasn't mine. Every business channel ran some version of the same headline. The secret billionaire who owned his bride's workplace. Vanessa hadn't just taken procedural control of my board. She'd taken control of the narrative, which for her was always the same thing. At 9, her settlement proposal arrived by private courier. It was elegant. I resign, effective immediately. She withdraws the capacity petition. No hearing, no vote, no spectacle. Grant reopens Nora's studio the same day. My medical history stays sealed forever. I keep my personal assets. And in exchange, the Adaptive Transportation Division goes to Grant at his price, with Vanessa installed as temporary executive during the transition. It was, I admit, a genuinely tempting piece of poison. It protected me from public humiliation. It got Nora's name out of the coverage. All it cost was the division that moved 80,000 disabled passengers a day, sold to a man who saw them as line items, run through a transition managed by a woman who had once described my wheelchair to my face as an anchor. Evelyn brought worse news with the coffee. Grant's been working the phones all night. With your votes suspended, our count says he takes the room by 2 proxies, maybe 3. And then one piece of better news. The archive's forensic index had finished correlating. The misleading rehab video had been exported from the continuity file on the exact date of the second credential access. Same session, same device. The proof existed. It was airtight. And it could only be shown one way, by playing the complete authenticated session, medical reports, breakdown, begging and all, in front of the full board and cameras. My phone rang. Nora. He called me an hour ago, she said without greeting. Grant, He's offering $2 million, cash this time, no deed to tear, if I'll sign a statement that you lacked the capacity to consent to our marriage. My grip tightened on the phone. What did you say? I told him the last document he handed me got torn in half, and I'd hate to break the pattern. A pause. Marcus, the archive. I spent most of the night in it. Then you know what's in the March session. I know what's in the March session. Her voice was careful. If it comes to it today, will you actually release it? All of it? The parts the parts you've been hiding from your own board for 5 years? Yes, I said. And for the first time in 5 years, the word didn't taste like a lie. She was quiet a moment. Noon, she said, and hung up. And I still didn't know which side of the room she'd sit on. I sent Vanessa's settlement back unsigned, and I told Evelyn again not to call Grant's loan. If I won today, it would not be by burning down 400 innocent paychecks. If that made me lose, then that was the company Vanessa could have. The boardroom antechamber at 1150 had all the warmth of an operating theater. I arrived in a tailored navy suit, in my chair, no cane theatrics, no standing for effect, nothing to perform. The chair is my life, not my argument. Vanessa was waiting. Pastel pink power suit, immaculate bun, and, I noticed, a fresh confidence that told me she already knew the proxy math. Grant stood beside her with the acquisition contract in a leather portfolio like a groom holding rings. She dismissed her assistant so it would be just the three of us. Last exit, Marcus, she said. Resign in there, voluntarily, before the vote. In return, the archive stays sealed forever. Grant unlocks the studio today. The press gets a lovely story about an innocent bride deceived by a secretive billionaire. Nora comes out of this a sympathetic figure instead of a punchline. And nobody ever has to watch that particular piece of footage. You know the one I mean. She leaned in slightly and dropped her voice into the register she used to use in our kitchen. The one where you grab my sleeve and cry and beg me not to go. 50 board members, Marcus, cameras, analysts. That version of you played at full volume in front of everyone who has ever feared you. She straightened, smoothing her jacket. I know you. You built $1 billion wall around that 1 hour of your life. You will lose this whole company before you let them see it. So save us all the theater and sign. And she was almost right. That was the terrifying part. For 5 years, she had been exactly right about me. No, I said. Something flickered across her face. The first crack since the ballroom. She had built her entire endgame on my shame, and I had just declined to bring it. Evelyn met me at the doors. Counts unchanged. He wins by 2 unless something moves. She hesitated. Nora's not here. The doors opened. The board filed in. Cameras went live for the shareholders streaming remotely. 12 o'clock struck, and at 1 minute past the back doors opened and Nora walked in. White wedding dress, no veil, black hair loose, and every camera in the room swung toward her. She did not come to me. She crossed to the witness section, apart from both tables, and sat down alone. She had come to hear the truth, not to guarantee me anything. Looking at her sitting there, equidistant from me and from the exits, I understood that this was exactly what I'd claimed I wanted from her. A choice made with full information. I was about to find out if I could survive being granted my own wish. Vanessa presented first, and she was disciplined. She never once mentioned my wheelchair. "This has never been about Mr. Reed's disability," she told the board. "And shame on anyone who suggests it. This is about concealment as a management philosophy. A CEO who hid $1 billion of structure from his own investors, who secretly purchased his wife's workplace and disclosed nothing, who governs everyone around him through information they're not permitted to have. The question isn't whether Marcus Reed is capable. It's whether anyone in this room can trust a single thing he hasn't been forced to reveal." It was devastating precisely because half of it was true. Grant followed with the acquisition, stability, jobs, certainty, and the preliminary proxy tally posted on the screen. Petition ahead. By 2. Then the chair recognized me. I rolled to the center of the floor and did the thing Vanessa had never planned for. I agreed with her. "Everything Ms. Cole said about concealment is accurate," I told the board. "I hid the scale of Vantage Arc from my own wife. I bought her building without telling her. I was so afraid of being loved for my money that I engineered a world where the woman I married couldn't make an informed choice about her own life, and I called it protection. I let fear of one betrayal 5 years ago become the architecture of everything I built afterward, including one clause I was too ashamed to reopen, which is the only reason we're all in this room." I looked at the tally on the screen. "So no, I'm not here to tell you I'm a man without flaws. I'm here to show you the difference between my flaws and her methods. Madam Secretary, I authorize release of Founder Continuity Archive, complete authenticated sessions, unedited, effective now." The room stirred. Vanessa's head came up sharply, and for one instant I saw it land on her, the realization that the hostage she'd been holding for 5 years had just walked out of the vault on his own. The screen changed. The board secretary read the certification into the record. Signature authentic, timestamps intact, session unedited and continuous. Then it played. They saw the access logs, Vanessa's credentials, her registered device, 3 entries. They saw the export record for the rehabilitation footage, and then they heard the session audio the system had captured during that export. Grant's voice, casual. "Can we cut it before he pulls himself together? The back half kills the whole effect. He runs the rest of the meeting like nothing happened." And Vanessa's voice, precise as always. "Cut it at the glass. Nobody needs to see him recover." Grant again. "Is a 90-second spasm really going to read as permanently incapable?" And her answer, the 11 words that ended her. "We don't need to prove forever. We only need them afraid for one day." The room had gone very quiet. But the session wasn't over, and I didn't stop it. Because the archive doesn't edit, the March recording played too. The hospital room. My voice, thin, slurred from medication, unrecognizable to people who only knew the man from the ownership map. Saying please, saying don't, saying I'll get it back, I promise I'll get all of it back. Just stay. The sound of her coat. The door. 50 board members watched me beg. I sat in the center of the floor and let them, my hands flat on my wheels, my eyes on the screen, because a man who demands the whole truth is not entitled to skip his own chapter. When it ended, nobody spoke for a long moment. Then Vanessa stood too fast and took the floor microphone without being recognized. And I understood, watching her, that she could not physically allow that room to sit with a version of events she hadn't authored. It was the flaw I'd counted on. The one thing she could never do was let someone else hold the story. "You want context?" she said, and her polish was cracking in real time, her voice climbing. "I used access he gave me, his clause, his system. Yes, I went in with old credentials because he was too weak to change them, the same way he was too weak to protect anything he owned. Yes, we shortened the footage. I gave Grant the file myself because the full version was misleading. And yes, I moved the vote up before he could maneuver because giving Marcus Reed time is the same as losing. Someone had to." She stopped because she heard it, one sentence too late. The room had heard it in real time. Knowingly used expired credentials, gave Grant the file herself, ordered the edit, rushed the vote to prevent a response, into the floor microphone, into the official minutes, on camera, streaming live to every shareholder who had lent her a proxy. The board secretary spoke into the silence and confirmed only what procedure allowed her to confirm, the archive's authentication, and that Ms. Cole's statement was now part of the record. Nothing more. The conclusion she left to the room, which was already reaching it. Within 20 minutes, counsel ruled that every proxy obtained on the strength of the edited video was suspended as tainted. The petition's 2-vote lead evaporated into a 14-vote deficit. Grant's acquisition, stripped of its voting foundation, was ruled ineligible for consideration. The chair asked if I wished to address remedies. Everyone in that room knew what I held. Grant's loan, callable at will, his whole company one signature from rubble. "Vantage Arc will not call the Mercer debt today," I said. "I'm requesting an independent review to separate Mr. Mercer's personal conduct from the 400 employees and contractors who had no part in it. The people who did this are in this room. The people who'd suffer for it are not. We will not confuse the two. That's the difference I promised to show you." And then Nora stood up in the witness section and asked the chair for 1 minute and got it. "I chose Marcus Reed at an altar yesterday morning," she said, "believing he had a fraction of the money in that other man's pocket. Then I found out he'd let me believe it, that he'd turned my choice into a test I never agreed to take. I walked out. I want that on the record too, because he doesn't get to be simple." She looked at me across the room. "I came back for one reason. Last night he handed me every file, every record, every ugly hour, with no conditions and no request attached. This morning he played you a recording no one could have forced out of him. Whatever you decide about your CEO, decide it knowing this: the man who hid everything just chose, twice, to hide nothing. People change direction. I've seen exactly one person in this dispute do it." The board rose when the session gavelled closed. I stayed exactly where I was, seated, hands on my wheels, because I had entered that room with nothing left to perform, and I intended to leave it the same way. The consequences moved through proper channels. Vanessa lost every access right and faced a fraud referral. Grant's purchase was withdrawn, his debt placed under independent supervision. I refused to call it and punish his innocent employees. That evening, Nora set 3 rules for our marriage. No secret ownership touching her life, no tests, and money never ends an argument. I agreed to all 3. The building stayed in the trust. She kept her studio, I kept my company. Weeks later, at our small reception, the torn deed hung framed in her studio. Proof she chose a man, not a price. I reached out my hand. She took it, walking beside me through open doors. Would you forgive someone who tested your loyalty without telling you? Tell me where protection ends and control begins.